In the last video, we presented information on how the gap between the wealthy and the rest of us has been growing wider and wider, and how the financial elites were not only not suffering, but were actually thriving in this economic environment, while the rest of us struggled to make ends meet and endure draconian cuts in the social safety net programs and aid to education. All the while, the financial elites showered themselves with huge tax cuts. Well, unfortunately, the situation is even worse than the first video presented. If you look at the current tax rates, it appears that the millionaires and billionaires have to pay a tax rate of 35%, but this figure is very misleading. It assumes a level playing field for all taxpayers. However, that is not really the case. If you take a look at the number of pages in our tax code, you will see that the size has been growing rapidly until the current tax code is an astounding 71,684 pages in length. How is it that the tax code has become so large? The answer is very simple. The wealthy elites contribute to the political class, and therefore they ultimately control the government and have the clout to have those bot politicians write loopholes into the tax code that enable them to take huge deductions on their taxes. So you and I end up in a situation where you have an illusionary apparent tax rate, but you also have a real-world effective tax rate once all the deductions are taken. Our 71,000-page tax code is totally riddled with these loopholes. The key term here is the effective tax rate. According to Forbes magazine, the highest earning taxpayers in the U.S. paid an income tax rate of only 17%, the lowest rate paid by the richest elites during the 15-year period covered by the IRS statistics. So their effective tax rate is lower than someone who only makes $34,000 a year. They pay a smaller share in taxes than their secretaries, gardeners, nannies, and chauffeurs. Now, while wealthy individuals pay an extremely low effective tax rate, we have a similar situation with the corporations. The largest corporations in the U.S. are supposed to pay a tax rate of 35%. While the corporations bemoan this rate, the reality is that due to the loopholes in the 71,000-page tax code, depending on what specific industry they are in, the effective tax rate can actually go into negative territory. For example, thanks to its deductions and adjustments, GE reported an actual U.S. federal income tax rate of negative 10.5%. It got to add a tax benefit of $1.1 billion back to its reported earnings. The actual amount in corporate taxes that the government collects, in other words, the effective tax rate, is lower than those of Germany, Canada, Japan, and China, among others. ExxonMobil pays no taxes. Despite benefiting from this corporate welfare in the U.S., Exxon complains about paying high taxes, claiming that it threatens energy innovation research. The corporate-owned media parrots these complaints, convincing the average person that corporate taxes hurt everybody. This reminds me of the saying of Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda minister, and he said, "If you repeat a lie often enough, it becomes the truth." In fact, in 2008, the Government Accountability Office found that 2 out of 3 United States corporations paid no federal income taxes from 1998 through 2005. So there we have most corporations in the U.S. not paying any tax at all, while they suck local services such as police and fire protections, road maintenance so that they can move their products and services, as well as international protection by the U.S. State Department and the U.S. military. These services do not come cheaply, and since they are not paying for them, we are. These corporate executives sit there with their patriotic flags on their lapels while they scheme how to avoid paying taxes and cut deals to ship American jobs overseas and set up tax havens in the Caribbean. Is it any wonder the rest of the country is mired in this economic misery while they prosper? So there you have it. The wealthy elites are not paying their fair share. The corporations are not paying their fair share, and the rest of us are struggling. So why am I mentioning this? Because of these loopholes, it will cost the United States government $628.6 billion over the next 5 years, according to a 2010 report from the Tax Foundation. If all these loopholes were closed, we could provide every one of the 11.5 million college students in the nation with a $54,600 grant. Or we could provide every one of the 43 million people on food stamps with a check for $14,600. Think about this. We are taking money away from those who need it the most so we can give it to the corporate and financial elites of this country, the people who need it the least. In the last video, we mentioned that we would show you what you can do about this and how this is already successfully being done in Britain. However, this video was needed to supplement the first one to better illustrate and drive home the astounding depth of the wealth inequality. In our next video, we will show the success story in Britain and explain how students here can start to organize and achieve the same success they did there.